Good afternoon. Welcome back to Passion World Talk Radio Network, a wholly owned subsidiary of Global Media Network LLC. Excuse me. Educate, enlighten, entertain. And on this week's episode of Lest We Forget History, we're going to talk about another type of slavery that persisted in the United States after the Civil War. Yes, in some cases, former African Americans were enslaved, but I'm talking about the Chinese who came over and worked under forced labor, indentured servitude, human trafficking. That was quite similar to slavery of the African Americans, particularly during the 19th century. It was called in the mid-19th century coolie, C-O-O-L-I-E, contracts. So what did it involve? Deception and coercion. Many of these Chinese migrant workers were deceived about their destinations and working conditions. The ship's captains and labor brokers often transported them against their will, sometimes into deadly environments like the Guano Islands of Peru. And we'll get into that another time, Chinese slavery in South America. Post-Civil War plantations. After the Civil War, and there was plenty of emancipated enslaved African Americans, the Southern plantation owners imported Chinese laborers to work on sugar plantations in states like Louisiana to replace the newly freed African American workforce. These workers were bound by severe contracts and faced conditions, exploitation, and abuse that echoed chattel slavery, including low pay and physical abuse. Let's not forget about the transcontinental railroad construction, shall we? Chinese laborers made up the vast majority of the workforce that built the western portion of the transcontinental railroad. And while they were paid, they received lower wages than white workers and endured grueling, dangerous conditions. The Central Pacific Railroad Company used violent labor enforcement and wage control to limit worker mobility, leading to accusations at the time that the federally funded product and project was a form of race-based slavery. Sound familiar, African Americans? Sexual slavery and human trafficking, forced prostitution. Many Chinese women and girls were trafficked into the U.S. and forced to work in prostitution rings where they were severely abused and had no legal protections. Sound familiar? The Page Act of 1875. This was the first federal law to restrict Asian immigration and specifically targeted Chinese women under the guise of preventing, quote, slavery, unquote, and prostitution. Ironically, this new law forced migration underground, which increased the trafficking and the exploitation. It aimed to stop mission homes, such as the Presbyterian Mission Home, now Cameron House, worked to rescue these women and girls from criminal gangs. That's how we got the blueprint for white slavery trafficking now, folks. Distinctions from chattel slavery. The primary legal distinction between the Chinese experience and African chattel slavery was that most Chinese men were nominally free laborers who entered into contracts, often under duress or deception, like the British, who would go out and either club people over the head and drag them onto their naval vessels, or met them in a brothel or a salon where they drugged their drinks and they were dropped down below and then hustled out to a waiting naval ship. But they were not considered the legal property of their owners for life, nor were the status hereditary. However, in practice, they did have a lack of freedom. Severe exploitation and physical abuse made their lives functionally similar to those in bondage. So that is something for you to think about. There's all types of slavery that was done and performed in the United States. It's just not the African Americans who lost their freedom, their way of life, or what happened to their descendants. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Please go over to our website, passionatworldtalkradio.com/blog. Listen to this week's podcast, read the summary, and of course, click on the handy dandy link below and read the rest of the story. Thank you very much for listening and enjoy the additional 6 weeks. But of course, he would see his shadow. His shadow. It was a sunny day. What do you expect? Have a great week.